Hello and welcome to episode 157 of the Board Game Barrage podcast. Thanks for joining us for the fourth in our 5-part series of Top 50 Games of All Time. This episode covers games 20 through 11. Joining me as always are the red tank Kellen.
Hello.
The orange tank Neilan.
Hello.
And the blue tank Christina.
Hello.
We ready to do this? Dive right in?
Yeah.
Let's get it started. Kellen, KMNC this time around.
Okay, but before we get to 20 through 11...
Let me guess what your 20 is. Can I guess?
Yes.
Is it Hanabi?
Oh, you, sir. I have to say, here and publicly, and this is probably the first time in 156 episodes, I have made a mistake.
No.
This has not happened, and I can promise in the future that I will do my bestest for it to not happen again. I control-copy, control-pasted something inaccurately in my list and somehow spread the love of Hanabi in 2 positions on my top 50 board games of all time list. This could only happen through the magic of time and recording. Hanabi is not both my 33rd and my 29th favorite board game of all time, though I do love Hanabi, and everyone is wrong who disagrees with that. The mistake with control copy, control paste, my 29th favorite board game of all time is actually an Oink game called A Fake Artist Goes to New York. This is a delightful small box pink game where you are drawing, and everyone at the table knows that you're drawing a duck, except for Mark, because Mark's an idiot, and he doesn't know that we're drawing a duck. And so everyone draws one line of the duck and passes the board around, and Mark has to try to pretend like while he's drawing that he knows what a duck is, even though he doesn't. The only relief valve that the hidden traitor has is the fact that if they guess what the drawing is at the end, they steal victory from the good players. A riotous game of laughter. This is probably, once again, more of an activity than a true board game. This has been iterated on, I think, in the Jackbox party games, but you owe it to yourself to try this version of a game just for the sheer laughter that happens. You know, you're drawing a submarine and a group of 5 people, and it gets to the 4th or of 5 people, and the person puts their pen down on the thing and draws a shark fin on the submarine, and everyone starts laughing immediately, and the whole round ends because that person misinterpreted the submarine and thought that maybe, just maybe, it was a shark. A fantastic drawing game, and just enough game there to keep it interesting for people who want to play that way, but really a family favorite, one of the best in the Oink line. I am sorry that it has been shrouded or caught up in this scandal here at the 29th spot with Hanabi, and that it is part of this mistake, but I will again proceed to make less of those going forward.
Well, first of all, Kellen, I'd like to thank you for removing the shroud and clearing up the scandal, the early scandal of 2021. That was kind of you to get out of the way early. I'll also say that I absolutely love this game. Absolutely love this game. This is a game that I like to bring to parties with like non-gamers. And it's one of those games, I think, that sort of blows people's minds, where people who are not like into the hobby, when they first play it, that twist of one person's not going to know what it is, but they have to try to guess and they have to try to play along like they do know what it is always like a twist that I think is a delightful surprise to people who are not knowledgeable about board games.
I will say also, it is surprisingly stressful for how small and fun party it is.
Yeah.
Like, it's still a hidden traitor game. I haven't played in a while, but we used to play it a lot, and every single time I would just have like those hidden traitor butterflies before it started, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, especially if you're really like early on, and then when people start to suspect you, oh gosh, it's horrible.
It has a little bit of the Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney at the end because everyone has a different color. And so it's like, all right, who is red? Because you drew a button on the shark and drew a wavy line in the background, and you can kind of point as evidence to why someone has clearly been the hidden traitor. Just a fantastic game. A Fake Artist Goes to New York, my number 29. Getting to today's topic, my 20th favorite board game of all time, I believe may have risen the most in 2020 of all games on my list. This is my 20th favorite game. Last year, rank 48, and this year, rank 20. This is the Reiner Knizia's puzzle game, Kyle Lang, Ingenious. Ingenious is a game that I have been playing a lot in quarantine. There is some digital implementations of it that I enjoy. Ingenious is a very simple, straightforward, play hexagons on a board, score colors equal to as many blue as you have in a row that are connected to that blue. But, and there's always a but in my favorite games. I'll pause for laughter.
Thanks, I was actually holding it in.
But in this game, your score is actually your lowest score. So of all the colors that you were trying to push upward and upward, you're scoring points. You may see a way on the board to score 7 blue, and you're like, that's so great, except I already have 12 blue, and I have 1 orange. And if I don't get orange up, my score is literally 1. What this does that's, I think, so fun, it's so fun, because you can look at what your opponents are trying to get and then just block the shit out of them. And it's like, if you can literally protect the board, like your mission changes from, well, if Mark never scores more than 1 orange, I have won the game. And so literally all I'm doing is doing everything possible to block Mark from getting orange. And that is so good. It's so great. We've talked a lot about Ingenious. My favorite way to play is actually in the team 2v2 variant. I find that it just makes it a little less stressful and a little less, I blame myself for this loss, when you can blame your partner. I really, really like Ingenious. I think the only true and living Dr. Reiner Knizia can do no wrong. Ingenious, I cannot see it leaving my collection. Just a renewed appreciation for it this year.
I am curious, what caused this renewed appreciation?
I just respect talent.
Oh, you discovered this year that you respect talent?
Yep.
Wow. Well, that's a nice thing to discover.
You guys like Ingenious, right?
Yeah, I like it a lot. I think the abstract nature of it sort of like, I think helps and hurts it in a way. Like, it helps because it gives it like a timeless feel. It feels like a game that should be in like every collection sort of feeling. But it also, it's so abstract. You know, you've got like the stars and the hexagons and the basic colors that it doesn't ever jump out at you as an exciting game to pick.
I agree. And I think that that's why my brain latches on to this idea of just like deny. Like, it gives some kind of more objective to what I'm doing in the game. And I love denying people things.
That's true.
But I hear you.
Yeah, it gives a game that sort of looks plain some bite when you play it that way. You know, it gives it like another level. Yeah, I agree.
That is my 20th favorite board game of all time, Ingenious, by the only true and living Dr. Reiner Knizia.
My 20th favorite game of all time, dropped from 15 last year, 18 the year before that. This is a Sandy Peterson game, Cthulhu Wars. Cthulhu Wars is a game that we all love, and a game that I suspect we all will be talking about throughout these series of episodes. Cthulhu Wars is a huge troops on a map game. You've got these really, really big miniatures, your leader miniatures, which can be Cthulhu, and all these other elder gods are massive pieces. And I have to actually thank Kellen for introducing me to this game. I'd heard about Cthulhu Wars long before we played it, and I just saw these huge miniatures and like this like fluorescent plastic and all these dice, and I'm like, this game is going to suck. Like, this game is not going to be for me. Like, just rolling dice and like moving these big Cthulhus around. But Kellen raved about it, and we sat down and played it, and he was right, He was right yet again. Cthulhu Wars is a fantastically asymmetric troops on a map game where everybody's powers are crazy. The factions start out asymmetric with their own sort of strengths and weaknesses, but like as you progress and as you unlock the spells in the spell book, it gets even wilder. And another thing I like is that as wild as it is, as dice rolly as it is, there's a really nice way that it's mitigated. Like, the dice rolling is there. It's there all the time, but you're rolling so many dice that there's mitigation just because of the sheer number of dice you're rolling. And, one issue I sometimes have with troops on a map game and, sort of war games, which this is sort of in that genre, is the fact that a loss, especially a loss that comes at the hands of a dice roll, isn't completely crushing. Like, you can lose troops in this game and it's not going to necessarily kill you, and that's something I really appreciate for a game that otherwise is so wild and crazy. You would think that maybe it would lend itself to like, oh, I lost this battle and I lost all my troops and I'm dead. That is certainly not the case with Cthulhu Wars.
I think that we maybe don't say it enough, that it's like a risk replacement that is just palatable enough for modern Euro players. You know, like, it should not work as well as it does as a strategic experience while still evoking what you loved about playing Risk 20 years ago, and then combined with just crazy asymmetry. When we are in the mood for that sort of game, it's almost always Cthulhu Wars that we turn to, and it's that good. Thank you, Sandy Peterson.
We're always in the mood for that kind of game. When have we not said, let's have a Cthulhu War, and then not done it?
Yeah.
That's true.
Or usually when we're playing any other area control game, it's just like, we should just play Cthulhu Wars sometime.
Right. There you go.
I do, Mark, have to say that you got through that entire explanation without using any of our well-established Cthulhu-related jokes. Mr. Cthulhu and Friends, you know, really saying a Sandy Peterson game or a Cthulhu War like Christina brought up. So I just think you need to up sort of your game.
All right. Well, this game is falling down my list, so if it survives next year, then maybe I'll come in strong next time around when I talk about the virtues of my 20th favorite game of all time, Cthulhu Wars.
I'll just say that I've made a mistake in this episode and contributed more than you already.
My 20th favorite game of all time is another game by the only... I hate that I can't do this, Kellen. The only true and living Doctor. I'm so sorry. Dr. Knizia game. This is one of my favorites of his. This is Blue Lagoon. It is I'm going to say it's a spiritual successor to Through the Desert. It is not quite a one-to-one, but it shares a lot of DNA with Through the Desert. And the reason I bring that up, actually, is because I played Through the Desert for the first time this year. So that comparison is especially apt talking about Blue Lagoon this year. Blue Lagoon, in summary, is a game about placing your villagers on a map of interconnected islands, and what you're trying to do by doing that is building routes towards resources to collect them, building routes towards huts which you're going to be placing. You're trying to connect the islands through one long unbroken chain, because all of these things are going to score you points at the end of the game. It has almost a Euro scoring system woven into the fabric of it, which is just like a layer on top of like the abstract blocking Go-like route building. And it also has this interesting system of being cleanly divided into two phases. So the first phase, you're placing your people out, placing down huts, and those huts are where your people must start from in the second phase of the game. Each phase scores separately, and then you just add your scores together for your total score. It's a very, very simple game. I think that the scoring nature of it can definitely be a little bit overwhelming if you're in the family realm of being like, look at this score sheet, these are all the different ways you're going to score. Just keep your eye on this throughout and be aware of it. It's not necessarily all going to make sense in your first play, but it is the marriage of that system with a very simple place a piece on your turn onto somewhere on the board gameplay, and you're doing that in service of blocking people and creating your own routes. That is quite simple to explain and beautifully strategic, and one that I'm always interested in playing. It's also got like a pretty vibrant art style. I love Blue Lagoon. As far as a comparison to Through the Desert goes, I think that I could grow to appreciate Through the Desert, having played it once, and I am now itching to play more of it. But in the interest of not having both games on my list, Blue Lagoon is still the one I would prefer to play of the two.
You had me in a two-phase game, Neilan. This is a double crossover with me. I had Blue Lagoon as my 49th favorite game. I'm a really, really big fan of it. I love as I mentioned before, the tempo nature of it, and I love how sort of easy it is to explain. But there's a lot of places to score points, and I think that can also be appealing to people who aren't steeped in board games and who are not looking for something as clean as Go, because a game like Go, like where Through the Desert is close to it, it can be a little harsher for people who are not experienced in gaming, and giving them the opportunity to score points here and there a little bit makes it, I think, a little easier sell. Although I love both games.
It's almost like, if I may, while I'm thinking about it, like what you were describing about Ingenious, I think that abstractness of it gets shaven off a little bit by the nature of the looseness of the scoring in Blue Lagoon, in a way that I think does have appeal, but is probably less pure as a result.
Oh my god, I can put ponies and unicorns on Ingenious and make a better game, and then Neilan would like it more. Oh, man.
No, not what I was saying. Nothing to do with the theme. I'm talking about the scoring, Kellen, you monster. That is my number 20 game, Blue Lagoon. Up 5 spots.
All right. My 20th favorite game of all time is kind of unlike any other game on my list. It's cutthroat. It is resource management at its most painful, and it has a theme that is so unique and so much fun to get lost in. Any guesses? I always make you do this and it's never fun. Sorry. My 20th favorite game of all time is Food Chain Magnate. This game is so hard and can be so punishing, but it's always such a unique and like thrilling experience full of painful decisions about like who to hire to build the best fast food chain and like which direction to go on this kind of weird like tech tree sort thing. I know, and we've talked about this amongst ourselves, but there are like people who play this game like chess and have like determined the best strategies. We don't really play it that way. We have more played it as like an experience of discovery every time, you know, because there are so many different milestones and only one player can get each milestone. It kind of changes every single game so much, and it does allow for so much discovery with each new game. I kind of feel like that really is the draw for me, and I guess I won't speak for you guys. But again, it really is about that discovery of what my game will look like and what opportunities open to me when I decide to hit that milestone first before everyone else. And then what that allows me to do, and then what I unlock from there and how that affects the game and the other players. I know this game can be tough because sometimes you're out of the game. Like a few rounds in, and that can be really punishing. But we've just had, and Neilan maybe will disagree, but we've had so many fun games of this that are just, like I said, kind of unlike any other experience that we've had in board gaming. And I just love it. Yeah, it's just always been such a great experience.
I think, and I could be wrong about this, I think I'm the biggest dissenter on Food Chain Magnate, and I would say, but not by a lot. It is genuinely hovering in like the 60s or 70s zone. Like it could easily in previous years have been on my top 50. I think I had a similar experience with it this year to one I described in an earlier episode with The Great Zimbabwe, where I actually played it a fair bit and kind of just found myself less wanting to play it the more I played it. But I will say that the thing I love about Food Chain Magnate is exactly what you described, which is when you look at the milestone board and you're like, you know what, this time I'm going for this one. And it's just this process of being like, you can look at the milestone board and elect to play differently just by the rewards you're going to potentially get by going down a specific path.
Yeah, and I think for me, the theme, I know I mentioned this already, but like I can't really state that enough. There's nothing else like it. And there's just something so fun about like, well, I'm really go the marketing route. This, you know what I mean? And it like is so, it feels more real than a lot of other themes do. I just love it. I just get lost in it. It's so fun.
I'm the brand director now in real life and in the game. Splatter. Mark probably has the most splatter, then Neilan, then Christina. I think I round out the end with 0 splatter. But Food Chain Magnates, I have sold and repurchased at Christina's request and got the ketchup expansion. Really novel. I think we always have a good time, but I do think that if we showed up at a convention and said, hey guys, who wants to play Food Chain Magnate?
We would be destroyed.
All 4 of us would get last out of last in a game with the good players.
Absolutely. 100%.
That is my 20th favorite game, Food Chain Magnate.
All right. My 19th favorite board game of all time is Genoa. Previously known as Traders of Genoa, this is a blast from the past, a negotiation game that you cannot get anywhere else. Genoa truly is something to seek out if you like negotiation games. If you like Euro games with negotiation, do not play Sidereal Confluence, do not pass go, acquire Genoa. Genoa has this insane system where in a 4-player game, you're moving this set of discs around a courtyard and you are taking actions at various buildings. Very standard Euro fare, turning in contracts, converting resources, getting resources, except, oh no, wait, it's but you can only take one action, even though you're controlling all these discs. So per turn, you get one action. So every other action, you have to auction off to the other players. And so the entire game is literally Christina going, Kellen, go to the Grand Market. I'll give you $3. And Neilan's like, Kellen, go to this trading post. I'll give you $2 and a card. And Mark's saying, no, go to this place for this, for that. You negotiate over everything. It's, should I go to that space? You literally are negotiating. You can just go down the street. Mark's like, I want you to go down the street. I'll give you $1 to go down the street. I don't even have anything I want to do over there. I want you going that away, Kellen.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, okay. The beauty of it, the absolute best moment in Genoa is when you take your action and you're like, I don't want any of you doing an action. And they're like, I'll give you $5. I'll give you $6. I'll give you $7. And you're like, I'm done. My turn's over. It literally blows people's mind that you can just stop whenever you want. Yeah, I've taken my action. I guess unless you offer me enough money, it's over. We're done. It's over. Another interesting wrinkle of these negotiations that is so funny is that if you go on a space because you're trying to get somewhere else and someone offers you money, you have to accept their bid, even if it's super low. So you might really want to get to the space behind the space and have to go through a space. And then Neilan goes, haha, I get this for like $1. And you're so frustrated, but you really needed to get to where you're going. Layered on top of that are some standard Euro systems where, you're trying to deliver messages. And so on one turn, this chain of discs needs to be touching 2 different locations. Or there's bigger things where you have to deliver, 3 resources to one of the corners of the board, and then you score 100 points. There's also the ability to sort of stake claim and own buildings. And then anytime someone uses that action on a subsequent turn, you also score points. This is just one that when I think about the podcast, when I think about the potential, the fact that the 4 of us have not sat down and had a game of Genoa.
Honestly, like hearing you talk about it and think about it, like we should just live stream a game of Genoa. I think it would be perfect.
No.
Like,
I would love that.
It'd be like 7 hours long, and we'd be like taunting each other.
BGB
And actually,
live stream.
that probably would be the best game for us to stream because it would just be...
We would just like be at each other's throats,
Yeah.
like, cajoling, negotiating, like just killing each other the entire time.
Yeah, that
It'd be
sounds great.
It is really unlike anything that you can get somewhere else. A landmark of a game design. There are other recommendations if you kind of like Genoa. You can go to Quo Vadis. You can play Intrigue. You can play Chinatown, but you can't get everything that you get from Genoa. A little bit of I'm the Boss in there too, I'm sure, at some point. I think that this is rife for a 1-hour version. I think my games of Genoa mostly took place at a bar in New York 5 or 6 years ago and were 3-hour riotous affairs. Nothing but love and memories for Genoa, my 19th favorite board game of all time. I lived in New York.
Tell me about pizza.
You sounded like you were about to cry there at the end, like you got really sentimental thinking about
I can
Kurt.
cry.
Let's see it on cue.
I used to be able to do that.
Okay, ready? Go ahead.
Okay, the Oculus burned my tear duct. Okay?
That's true, actually.
That's real.
Look at this. Oh, God. Okay.
It's no good. I'm serious, though. I got chemical burns from Oculus, and I'm really mad at Facebook and sending them mean messages.
That seems warranted if they've burned out your ability to
Yeah, there's children
cry.
in the hospital, Mark.
That's true. I'm
You're
agreeing with
laughing.
you. You can no longer cry. You were such an emotional guy that for them to take that away from you.
All right.
My 19th favorite game of all time, speaking of games that wear Euro clothes but also hide another aspect, is another BGB favorite, Archipelago, where Genoa is sort of a Euro game that has heavy negotiation. Archipelago is sort of a Euro game, but it's got a heavy potential of a hidden trader, shared objectives. It's got a lot of Euro trappings. There's an internal market and an external market. There's resource gathering and there's exploration where you're flipping tiles and growing the board. A lot of things you see in a lot of other Euros. But the thing that sets Archipelago apart is the fact that everybody has one part of what the scoring will be for the end of the game. So everybody knows one aspect of what the scoring will be, sort of a la Trois, the same way that Trois, everybody sort of has information of what the final scoring for everyone will be. But furthermore, with Archipelago, there's always the possibility that somebody wins if everybody loses. So in a lot of these games, there is a everybody lose condition, but in Archipelago, the everybody lose condition is actually somebody's win condition. So there's always a chance that somebody could be throwing the game. And in Archipelago, having everybody lose, having that condition where everybody loses, can happen quite easily because there's a lot of crises that pop up throughout the game where it requires everybody working together to get them resolved. So if one of you is actually hoping that a crisis takes down the game, it can get really tough and really tense. It's just a super unique game. The shared goals and the hidden traders aspect of it is just really unique, and it's got a really robust, maybe a little too robust of like a Euro side to it. There's a lot going on in the Euro half of Archipelago, but it's really, really unique.
Yeah, I think unique is exactly the right word for it. This is double crossover with me. It was my number 28 game. There's nothing that threads the needle of, like you said, like being a Euro game, but with this very delicate ecosystem that you're trying to figure everyone's role out as you play. It's such a novel game.
I love the fact that there is hidden scoring, but everyone scores for everyone's endgame condition. And that's such a fun way of always having to pay attention to what everyone's doing. It's like, why is Mark acquiring pineapples?
Right.
I just love that, and that's a kind of a mainstay in many games that I like a whole lot.
That is Archipelago, my 19th favorite game of all time, down from 11 last year and 6 in 2018, so also falling.
My number 19 best game of all time is Dominion. This is still the highest deck builder on my list. It is very much like the granddaddy of deck building. I think it's still the go-to if you wanted the purity of deck building. Like, there's not much more to the deck building in Dominions than collecting the cards, adding them to your deck, using those cards in order to boost your actions, boost your money, and then at some point pivoting towards acquiring points. The twist being that point cards typically are not useful in the engine portion of your deck. So you want to find the appropriate time to pivot towards collecting points when you know the game is about to run its course. It has all the satisfaction of the very, very best of deck builders. It's why it's still my favorite, in that when you have built the perfect deck at the midpoint or the final third of the game, and you're watching it firing on all cylinders, you're going through a hand, and that hand is telling you to draw more cards, and that hand is telling you to draw more cards, and then get this, and buy this, and do this. When you see that all work beautifully in sync because you've just constructed the perfect little deck, it's so satisfying. Dominion was one of the first strategy games I actually played when I came to the hobby in 2011, 2012. And I remember thinking, first and foremost, that I had to show my brother, who we grew up playing deck construction games like Magic the Gathering together. And I just loved the idea of building a deck and making that as part of the course for the game. And obviously that's not a novel concept anymore, but Dominion still feels like it just does it so well.
Dominion is so good. And really, it's a testament to Dominion that every deck building game is usually some form of, this is like Dominion,
Right.
but worse.
Exactly.
It's like, this takes everything you love about Dominion and then adds 17 things that you don't care
Right.
about, nearly half as much. That's not always the case, but it almost is.
But like, even as recently as like Dune Imperium, which we spoke about this year, it's like you're still seeing all the same analogs to stuff that was in Dominion, you know, like just translated into Dune land. It very much like continues to be like the fundamental source of inspiration for the genre. That is my number 19 game, Dominion.
I would like to make a correction for something that Kellen felt he was wronged. So this is what's going to happen. This is a double crossover. I'm going to make it up to Kellen because nobody got to hear his joke last time. So I'm going to make my own joke and he gets to say whatever he wants over my joke so you can't hear my joke. Okay, ready? Okay, so do you ever want to impress your friends and you want to play poker with them, but you want them to think you're really cool? You're scaring Misty. She got really scared.
I don't blame her.
Well, that was a really funny thing I said, and my number 19 best game of all time is Taj Mahal.
Oh, this is the next game on my list. This is my number 18, is Taj Mahal.
Wow. So that's a
That is
triple
now
crossover
a triple
then.
crossover, yeah.
Yeah, we talked about this last week a bit, but we're going to talk about it a bit more today because the Doctor never lets us down, and especially with Taj Mahal, because this is a Euro game, but it's fighty and mean, just like we like them. I love this game because it's more about timing than anything else. It is so cool because it has a system where I can win elephants with one card, a single card, right after the turn where Kellen had to spend 5 elephants to beat Neilan, and then they both lost all their elephants after that. You just have to pay such close attention to what other people are doing, and you have to kind of come up with this plan for what you want, but be able to pivot and be okay pulling out when it's not going to work out, you know? It has such a tension because of that, and it just forces you to be so precise about what you're going for and when, and I just love it. We used used to play this a lot, and it's been a while, but man, we just had so many good games of this.
Yeah, no, this is another one that I played really, really early a long time ago, and I'm bolstered by the beautiful new edition that Z-Man put out a couple of years ago. We've been playing this more recently. And man, yeah, this is my favorite Knizia game for what it's worth. I think that you nailed everything I love about it, Christina. In fact, like looking at my notes here, it's like the fact that you can see the board laid out at the start of the game and you have to plan ahead for the auction that's coming, down the line. But you also have to have that backup plan when something goes wrong, because it's all very well to say, okay, I'm going to hoard my elephants or what have you until this round, but you might not just have enough to eke it out. And then you have to do that very delicate decision of, do I pull out and forgo this thing I've been planning for, but not waste any more elephants that I could use later down the line? It's so mean, firstly. Like, when you get to that lot that you suddenly realize you can't win, that feels terrible. But it's so much of what the game is built around, is knowing what is worth planning for, what is not worth continuing to push for when you realize it's too late and you got God.
Mark talks about really appreciating this game but not getting it. And that truly is because he gets into one of these auctions and he sees the cards in his hand and he just wants to win.
That's right.
It's sort of win at all costs Mark. When in reality, sometimes you just got to know when to walk away and actually just say, I'm literally not participating in this to take cards from the discard pile, because next time I'm going to have 5 advisors and you guys have no idea what's about to be unleashed upon you. And that is why Taj Mahal is not in Mark's top 50.
What are you, Kenny Rogers over there?
I thought we said this wasn't a poker game.
Another thing our group does with this game is we use some negotiation, where it's like, Neilan, I won't fight you for that if on the next turn you let me whatever. You know what I mean?
It's closer to threats,
right?
Where it's like, Neilan, I've got 12 elephants.
Right.
Don't
you dare.
You can't win this. It's not worth it.
And Neilan says, that's more than the cards that you have. And you say, don't look at my cards.
That is my number 19 game, Taj Mahal. Thank you,
Wait, you guys are going to
Doctor.
do it simultaneously?
Oh, sorry. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry, Neilan. I'm sorry.
This is your thing. This is your guys' thing.
Okay, ready?
Yes. This and that's
why my number 19
Taj
game,
Mahal.
Taj Mahal.
Yeah.
Perfect.
My number 18 favorite board game of all time maintains its slot from last year. This is Sid Sackson's best game of all time. I'm the Boss. I love saying it in all forms. First of all, I have such a soft spot for negotiation games that provide a different way to negotiate. I think that they are few and far between, frankly, which is why in the past few years we've lauded Sidereal Confluence, the game I can't keep bringing up when I talk about other negotiation games for some reason. In I'm the Boss, you are going on a series of deals, and those deals are clever. They need some combination of the players at the table. It might be A and B, and then C or D. So I need Mark, gotta have Neilan. Oh, but I could have Christina or not Christina. Christina's sister, Nicole. And then I get to pit Christina and Nicole against one another. And I say, well, me, Mark, and Neilan, we're required. So we get 10 million each. You guys, we don't care which one of you will take it. So we'll give you 5, and then Christina says, yeah, I'll do that for 5. And then Nicole says, well, I'll do it for 4. I'll say, Christina, what can you do? Can you do it for 3? We're required. You're not required. We're required. We get 10 each. And it's that sort of circular logic where none of the logic makes any sense. And yes, the game does get a little silly as you have cards that are essentially take that cards. And in the context of corporate America, those take that cards are actually go on a vacation cards. And so, Christina could say, well, Neilan isn't so much required because he's on vacation. And he slams that out, and then, oh, damn, we need a backup. We don't have a Neilan. Okay, well, let's get someone else involved. Each negotiation is different. It is quite cutthroat. Money is acquired publicly, but is then hidden. So many people really dislike that. But near the end of the game, the mathematicians in the group are kind of going, oh no, Mark has $45 million and we can't let him be in on this last deal. How the game makes up for it is by having the end game. You don't know when it's going to end. And so you do have to sometimes take a less take in this negotiation if you give me more in the next negotiation. I'm the Boss is crying, like many of the games in this part of my list, for a newer, sexier 2020, 2021 edition that streamlines and gets to the palate of the modern gamer, which is more boring and more Euro and a little more
work from home version.
Yes, the work from home version of I'm the Boss. Such a good game, and really one of those ones that I think anyone in the right spirit who likes negotiation games would sit down and have a grand old time for an hour. I just really, really adore I'm the Boss.
So Kurt, get in the spirit next time.
Get in the spirit, Kurt.
This game is so much fun. I love yelling and arguing and fighting and sending people on vacation. The most recent game we played of this was with Kurt, who was having zero fun, and it was still so much fun. Sorry, Kurt.
Kurt being my friend from New York City, from the many times that...
The aforementioned.
Yes.
Tears.
At one point, I did live in New York City. Thank you for asking. Sid Saxon is a designer that I need to play more of his games. You know, I actually purchased Bazaar, another one of his old games. We iterate so often, you know, on boring Euro game, blah, 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 that has come out like 20 times in the last year. And I think that some of these old greats like have unique ideas like hidden in them. And part of what I like looking for is like, oh, you know, that hasn't been redone or reiterated upon. And wouldn't it be cool? But if that sounds cool, please check out I'm the Boss, a really, really cool negotiation game. My 18th favorite board game of all time, I'm the Boss.
Speaking of old greats that have been iterated upon, my 18th favorite game of all time is the Knizia classic, Tigris and Euphrates, which was iterated upon by Knizia himself in the recent Yellow and Yangtze. Speaking of Yellow and Yangtze, part of me thinks that Yellow and Yangtze might even be a better designed game.
I think so.
Okay, there's one person who agrees with that comment. But I think that Tigris and Euphrates is a better game to me. I think what does it for me, what makes me want to select Tigris and Euphrates over Yellow and Yangtze is that I play Tigris and Euphrates first and fairly often early. And it's always been to me like the civilization game that is very simple rule set, but very cutthroat and tough and very impactful decisions. Yellow and Yangtze, I think, is a better design by sort of like shaving off some of those edges. I think I can see people enjoying it more, and I think if I played Yellow and Yangtze first before Tigris, that might have changed my opinion. But for me, the Tigris game is a game that is just really rough, like really intense decisions, and I think the changes that were made in Yellow and Yangtze sort of like lessen that, but to the benefit of other aspects of the game. For those who don't know, Tigris and Euphrates is, like a lot of other Knizia games, most notably, in my mind, modern art, sort of an abstract game where the theme that has been quote-unquote pasted on actually really, I think, works. Modern art could be about a lot of things, you know, could be about any sort of economic system, but the way that Knizia has a design, it really does feel like it evokes the modern art scene. Tigris and Euphrates is a game that is sort of chess-like. It's got that low rule set and you're sort of fighting over space, but the civilization theme that is, again, quote-unquote pasted on really does work, really feels like it comes through. You really feel like you're having these wars over territory. Chess, I think, is a good analogy for Tigris Euphrates because it does have a Titanic feel to it, and that roughness, that impact of decisions is one of the things that I like the most about it. The biggest change, I think, from Tigris and Euphrates to Yellow and Yangtze was the way that they handled the war conflicts, the big like external conflicts. And with Tigris and Euphrates, depending on how things break, it can really tear a board state apart, where Yellow and Yangtze, that is lessened. But yeah, it's just another thing where a game that feels grand and sweeping for me really shoots it up my list. So that's why I enjoy Tigris and Euphrates so much.
I don't think I actually disagree with anything you said about comparing the two. I think Tigris and Euphrates could easily be my favorite of the two under different circumstances, had I been able to play it more, etc., etc. I think that the edges that Yellow shaves off are things that are not something I would say are strictly improvements. Like, it takes away some of that spatial magicalness that you're describing, where cities like transform and like are completely obliterated by a war. The way that the board state changes after a conflict in Tigris and Euphrates is profound, and that's not something that grabbed me about it, but I think the people that really love Tigris and Euphrates, that's the thing, right? It's like watching how a conflict can change the spatial puzzle to your benefit.
Exactly. So that is my 18th favorite game of all time, Tigris and Euphrates, down from 12 last year and 14 the year before that.
My 18th favorite game of all time is a John Cloudis Meeples on a Map area control game called Mezo. Mezo has a ton of systems going on. And as you probably know, listeners, this is a genre for us that is competitive in terms of there are a lot of games in the Meeples on a Map world that we really, really love. Cthulhu Wars has already been mentioned this episode. And so it's a competitive space to make it onto our top 50 list. What's super interesting about Mezo, one of the things that I love, and again, it's hard to even know where to start because there's so much going on, but there are multiple types of area control. So each region can be won in multiple ways. And so that makes every conflict and battle really interesting. There's a lot about this game that is tactical and more tactical than other Meeples on a Map games. One of the reasons for that is, like I just said, the multiple ways that each region can be won. You might be more interested in the shaman total than the warrior total in a specific region. And there is also the victory point system where no two players can land on the same victory point spot. So hypothetically, you can get one victory point that actually jumps you over four other players and you get 5 victory points instead of 1. And so it's very tactical in that sense where you're just constantly reading the board state. Things are changing a lot all the time. There's the card system, which is everybody only has 5 cards total, and each card does the same type of thing, but there are asymmetric player powers. So the actual tasks on every single card are different. But if somebody plays a certain type of card, you know the genre of thing that they're going to be doing. It's tactical because you only draw 3 cards of your deck of 5 and you get to pick 1. And so you might be thinking, I know exactly what I want to do on my turn, but then you don't draw the card that you need. And so you have to pivot and make a different play. And you can because there's so much going on and there's so much you can do. The production is incredible. The minis are just gorgeous. I actually prefer this theme a lot to other Meeples on a Map games, which tend to be a little bit, like obviously we have Cthulhu Wars. Those are gross. I think that's probably a downside. At the same time, is that there is so much going on. It's not an easy game to teach. It is not easy to remember all of the unique terms. There's like a lot of like appease and like all these specific terms that mean very specific things to this game. So it's definitely a game that takes a few games to really get the hang of. But it's worth it once you get the hang of everything, because once everything is firing off at the same time, it just all works so well together. And I tend to love these tactical games where you are forced to pivot and make hard decisions right in the moment, depending on what's going on in the game.
Mezo is really a great and interesting game. It fits in alongside Blood Rage and Rising Sun as a more Euro affair. There is a lot of open information in Mezo, and some of the only closed information is which god card is everyone going to choose. So the different gods have asymmetry, but each turn you can only play one of their 5 cards, but you don't get to choose among all 5. You only get to choose among 3. Cloudis makes a lot of decisions in this game that force tactical thinking, which I think Christina and I both really like and probably prefer over strategic play. There's something really interesting about the gods impacting multiple areas because they sit at sort of the vertices of different stuff. So you have your troops, your shamans, your warriors, and then the god is like, I could do something in this area or that area or that area. And you're sort of trying to do a lot of calculation. I think when we played this most recently, there was a paralyzed feeling of like not wanting to make the wrong move because you can calculate a lot of it out in a very Euro way. A really interesting design. It feels like a Cloudis. It feels like a big box experience. I'm super happy that we have this in our shared collection, but it's mine, baby, not yours.
I don't remember the details of our last play of this game, but the 3 big memories I have of it were, 1, going into it, I remember being a little cautious about it because I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kellen, this was Cloudis's first big box game, and it was sort of getting mixed reviews. Was that correct?
Yeah, I think the company involved also plays into that a little bit, but yes.
Right. That was my first recollection. My second recollection was Christina towards the end of the game, just pacing around the table as she's trying to figure out what she's doing. Like, I have a very vivid memory of that. And my third recollection of the game is after finishing playing it, being very pleasantly surprised and wanting to play it again. So yeah, I totally endorse this. It was a really fun game, and I can't wait to give it another shot.
Yeah, and then given that the last time we played this was, again, like early in the year, it's also one that's been in the back of my head of something that I would love to return to in the normal times.
Yeah, no, obviously this year's been tough, but this game is kind of like always in my head as like there's just more that I want to uncover and experience there.
Yeah,
you know?
and I think that's kind of what I mean. Is I felt like we were on the cusp of like playing it more and really unlocking it, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So that is my 18th favorite game of all time, Mezo.
And not the last you'll hear of our good friend, Mr. John Cloudis. My 17th favorite board game of all time has risen dramatically from spot 45 all the way to slot 17. This is my highest rated co-op game of all time. This is The Game. I think that, if nothing else, a pandemic has taught me the value of shared cooperation, hanging out, doing something very, very small. The Game is a small card game. You must get the Quanshai Moria version from Pandasaurus that has just beautiful illustrations. This is a game of limited communication, something that I think that modern co-op games have done fairly well, where you're playing cards onto piles in ascending and descending order and trying to make it so that everyone can keep playing. If someone can't play, you lose the game. There is a ton of friendly tension in this game as Mark ruins a pile. Takes a pile from 17 to 87, and you say, Mark, that could not have been the best card you could have played. No, it was the best card I could have played. Just a lovely card game. I do not like cooperative games and almost will never choose them, but there is enough tension hidden in the game. This snuck onto my list last year because I couldn't imagine the list without it. And in this pandemic, it just dawned on me through playing. It's an important game for me. I really, really just dig The Game.
Yeah, this is a game that I've introduced to family this year in our limited get-togethers, and it always goes over super, super well. It's, again, really fun co-op, and the limited communication is just done really well, I think.
And that is the worst game for SEO of all time. My 17th favorite, The Game.
My 17th favorite game sort of harkens back to what I said about my 30th favorite game, Container, where I said this isn't a game for everyone. I think there are a lot of things that are tough to sell when it comes to my 17th favorite game, Dominant Species, but it's a game that I just can't help but loving. It is too long. The calculations you have to make for dominance and for control can be a little tough to get your mind around, but I'm just a sucker for the sweep of it. It promises to be a game where you're fighting amphibians versus mammals versus birds for the fate of the planet, and I get caught up in the sweep of it and the grandness of it and the epic nature of it. And it's not even a situation where the game is that evocative in its pieces or anything, because
those cones.
Yeah, you've got cones and cubes, but I just love it. And I love the worker placement system where it's one of those games where it has like a sort of sideboard and you place your workers on it and they always activate from top to bottom. So there, again, tempo is a thing that I talk about in a lot of my games and something I like. I just like that timing thing. Like, okay, do I want to do something that activates first, but at the sacrifice of being able to play something later on the board that might be more powerful? The late Chad Jensen's Dominant Species is just a game that I can't help but loving. There's a new version called Dominant Species Marine, which promises to be quicker, and that is something that I'm very, very much looking forward to. That is my 17th favorite game of all time, Dominant Species, up from 19 last year and down from 16 2 years ago.
If I recall correctly, Mark, you try-harded our last game of this to the tune of it taking 12 hours. Or actually longer than 7 hours.
That is not correct.
That is not
with
correct.
the three of us.
That is
correct.
It wasn't nearly that long.
Yes,
Yeah,
it was.
It was not.
Yes, it was.
It might have felt
More
that
than
way.
7, less than 12.
It's no way.
Why are you bringing this up to me, to the person who actually has it down? I don't understand why you're...
I would be
have it.
shocked if it was more than 4.
I would be shocked if it was less than 5, which is still down from the 7 and 12.
Actually, Kellen is surprisingly accurate.
What?
6 hours and 2 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm shocked.
What?
I don't remember that, which sounds like something I would remember.
Oh, I
How
remember.
do you feel about Mark recording things now, Kellen?
That's right. Thank you, Christina.
That did help. That's fair.
Wow.
Very, very fun
Yeah.
game. Enjoyed it quite a bit, but we try-harded the out of each other.
It's one of those games that, despite how long it clearly was, like, I remember enjoying so much conceptually, so much so that I do think that the Marine version is one that's actually super interesting to me. Like, taking that but shaving off the game time sounds great to me. My number 17th favorite game of all time is Alchemists. This is a game from one of my favorite publishers, CGE. It is a deduction/worker placement hybrid where the theme is about being alchemists developing potions. So you start off with a smattering of little alchemical reagents that you don't know what they do exactly. And through the process of making potions, you're going to figure out what potions each of those reagents makes. If I mix the toad with the feather, then I know I'm going to get a red potion. And you use that information over the course of making these potions to be able to correctly assemble these potions, which you can then sell in order to get money, which you can then use to publish your findings, because the first person that finds the properties of a reagent is going to get rewarded in victory points for it. But you don't have to publish factual information. If you think you know what a reagent does, you can publish the information, and then someone might some point down the line be like, you know what, I don't think that's actually right. And then they counter publish you, and there's kind of this like very true to academia feel of people just trying to like better the person that got their paper published first. So there's this awesome pressure of like being accurate versus being fast. So there's a little bit of press your luck rolled into it. And all of that would be great and enough, but there's also this really, really tense cutthroat worker placement system where you're bidding on how soon each of your actions in each action stage will go. So you might be, okay, I don't want to wake up that early this round, so I'm going to risk going later in the potion selling phase. And then by the time you get there, all the good potions that you wanted to sell might not be available to be sold anymore. Or the paper that you wanted to publish might have been published the step before you. And the combination of those two things, like this really, really harsh worker placement and the process of just figuring out all those reagents, even once you've got the deduction system down, I still find it like satisfying to work through. This is such a unique game. Like, it feels a little bit just like the process of scientific discovery, of finding out things boiled into a worker placement game. I can't think of anything that's quite like it. It's certainly not the best deduction game. It's certainly not the best worker placement game, but the hybrid of the two creates something super, super special.
I prefer Clue.
Fair. That is Alchemist.
Is that fair?
That is not fair. That's fair for Kellen.
I don't think it's fair.
Sometimes the only way to respond to Kellen is just like to tell him he's right.
Exactly.
And move on.
Wait, no.
You know?
You've never done that before.
This is all I've ever done. It's like, you know what? One word dismissal. Let's get on with our lives.
Exactly. Neilan knows how it's
That is
done.
my number 17 game, Alchemists.
My number 17 game is probably going to be the Doctor's greatest achievement, because making it this high on any of our lists, he's going to be really happy, hopefully. This is Babylonia.
Ooh.
So Kellen and I have been playing this 2-player a lot, and it is so good. Obviously, because it just kept on ticking up the list and just getting better and better, you know? So Babylonia is a recent Reiner Knizia great. I'll say it. It's a great already. So this is a tile-laying game where you have 5 tiles at any one time to choose between. And that seems really limiting, and it is, because there are obviously quite a lot of placement rules. So despite being limited by your hand, there is never a lack of something to do, because you can use these tiles for multiple different purposes. You're setting up your long-term scoring game. Sometimes you just have to do short-term, I'm going to block Kellen so that he doesn't make this crazy combo. And then there are other opportunities to just get instant point grabs. So there's a lot of different things to balance in this game. One of the really unique things is that one of the main scoring mechanisms is scoring cities. But what's so cool about it is that when you score a city, you place it in front of you, and then for the rest of the game, when you or any other player scores cities, you get points for that city you scored and any other cities you scored. So if Kellen at the very beginning of the game is just running away with a bunch of cities, there's kind of a point where there's nothing you can do. You can't catch up to him because every single time I score a city, I'm giving him 5 points because he's already stolen 5 cities from me. It's super, super tense, especially at 2-player, because you are constantly just like, man, should I go take the offensive route or the defensive route? We've just had some very, very tense and like lightning fast games of this. It's way shorter than you expect. It's over before you want it to be over, which is kind of a nice sweet spot. I love that in games because then you can just start a game again and keep the momentum going.
One of the things that I love about Babylonia is that there are these cards that feel a little un-Knizia-like that give you special abilities, and you only can unlock a certain amount of them per game. And so each game, there's kind of more to explore. In our most recent game, I explored the one that gave me 7 in my hand instead of just 5. So it gave me more opportunities for more different combinations. But on other games, there's like one that lets you take an extra turn, or there's one that lets you break a bunch of the placement rules. And so each game, you're definitely not going to be able to get all those things because you can't get behind in cities. And every little thing you do scores points, similar to Blue Lagoon, but it's a little bit more baked in during the game as opposed to at the end of the game. I would be shocked not to find this in my top 50 next year. I just want to play it at a higher player count. For me, like 2-player is like not 2-player Babylonia, just 2-player games in general are not my sweet spot. And I just want to run it a few more times at the 4-player count. This could be my favorite Reiner Knizia game too. I haven't kicked the tires enough at that full 4-player count to know that it's mine.
What's actually super interesting is I think that in light of everything you've been saying about it as a 2-player game, Christina, like I'm actually really excited to revisit this as a 2-player game because it sounds like it would change, not necessarily anything I dislike, but it would just change so much of the fundamental nature of just like the back and forth of the blocking and the placement to, it would condense it in a way that I found a little bit overwhelming in my first 4-player game of it.
Yeah, no, it definitely feels less overwhelming, but it's also more stressful because you are completely focused on them and they're completely focused on you. Whereas I think at the higher player counts, like you can get away with kind of doing your own little thing. And if people don't notice, you can run away with the game, and it doesn't happen with Cal and Allen watching your every move.
Yeah, it's a unique satisfaction to not play the game, to build your own combos, but to just deny your partner's combos.
That is Babylonia, my 17th favorite game of all time.
My number 16 favorite board game of all time probably needs the least amount of introduction. This is Telestrations, a quintessential party game of telephone where you are drawing and writing and drawing and writing and guessing. You know, it could be a cat riding a banana bike, and then someone has to draw that, which is funny. Oh, it's already laughing. And then someone has to write what you drew and then draw what you wrote, and it's passed around and around in a game of telephone. At the very end, the best part is the show, the presentation, where you have to flip through and say, well, it started here, and here's where we got. Telestrations, I feel like we've iterated this a lot, probably barely a game. In fact, my favorite way to play it is to subtly misinterpret what people are doing intentionally so that you cannot be accused of having just deliberately done it, but in a way that has your whole family going, Kellen, why are you so stupid? When in reality, I know that I'm the smarty pants because I did it intentionally.
It is funny because with this game, like technically you win if at the end the word or phrase is the same as what you started with. But when you're doing your show and tell, you know, you get your book back and you have no idea what it's going to be. It is incredibly disappointing when it ends up being the same as you started with. Like you really want it to be a funny, like you want to just put on a show, and when it's like, oh, every picture
Toaster.
is a toaster.
Toaster.
Yes,
Oh, there's
so
some
boring.
toast. Toaster. Oh, it went from toaster to toast. Great. We had a great time.
The game you don't want to win.
This is one of the only games I have purchased the 12-player party pack and left at my parents' house. It was taking up too much space in my board game bag as the only game that my sister will play. Literally the only game she will play. So now it has a permanent home at my house. You can't make up these memories. Telestrations, my 16th favorite board game of all.
I keep forgetting to put this on my list. I think maybe next year.
Maybe someday.
I feel like I just want to do
Maybe
that.
you
like
should put it on twice,
yeah,
like Kellen
exactly.
did with Hanabi. Make up for it.
Hey, I issued a correction. I made a mistake.
That's fair. That's fine. My 16th favorite game of all time is a game that I think will feature heavily at MarkCon, should we decide to put that on this year. 18xx games come in two general flavors. There are games that are about stock manipulation. There are games about running a company well. My 16th favorite game of all time, 1846, is a game about running your companies well. It's sort of the quintessential game about running your companies well. One thing I like about this game, I always find it sort of interesting when a designer of a game designs a game that's sort of outside his typical wheelhouse, and 1846 is designed by Tom Lehman, who actually started by designing 18xx games, but is much more known for Race for the Galaxy and Res Arcana and those games. But he was the designer of 1846, and it's one of my favorite trading games. It's a game that I think is sort of an easier sell to the more Euro-minded, or not even Euro-minded, but more maybe folks who have played board games before, but not necessarily 18xx games. 1846 is a great sort of introductory game, and the fact that you are playing it to run your companies well rather than to like manipulate stocks and do that kind of stuff just lends it to teaching people who are just looking to play another game, because all you're doing is trying to optimize the way you're running your companies, and people who've played board games can get behind that. So yeah, I love it for that aspect of it and for being an 18xx game. This is my 16th favorite game of all time, up from 18 last year and 17 the year before. It is 1846, The Race for the Midwest.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, and I think I've asked you this before, but this is the one that you would generally recommend as a good first 18xx, is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Although, with us playing City of the Big Shoulders, I'm sort of trying to figure out what that means, because City of the Big Shoulders is a Eurification of 18xx, so I'm wondering, should we go with another Euro 18xx game? Although this is much more 18xx, so probably I think it would be the next one to play. So, yeah.
Cool. My number 16th game of all time is Rising Sun, and first and foremost, the haters. Rising Sun is fantastic. I don't know why the gaming populace has so dramatically turned on Rising Sun. It seems to be the least esteemed of Eric Lang's Troop on the Map designs so far, at least. But I love Rising Sun. I think that it is, first and foremost, a gorgeous production. I think the way that Rising Sun hybridizes sort of troops on the map combat with the tension of these loose alliances. We often joke at its expense, perhaps, that it's not the negotiation game that it was promised to be, but I do think that the negotiation that is baked into Rising Sun is still very, very interesting, which is at the beginning of every alliance phase, there's this almost like, no, you're going to come with me, we're going to help each other out, you and me, we're in this for this entire round. But every alliance in the Rising Sun is purely one of like momentary convenience. At every single point, you have to be asking yourself, how do I get the edge on my ally, even? You're probably trying to, as an alliance, get the leg up on the other people at the table, but there's still at the back of your head of, when do I pivot this alliance to my advantage? Because ultimately, it is not a game of alliances. It is a game about a single winner and finding the optimal time to either backstab or just turn on your alliance and break it and start one with someone else. Is everything in Rising Sun. The game works on sort of an action selection system where you share benefits with your allies, so there is some discussion around what actions are going to benefit both of you the most. And it's coupled with what is, to my mind, a really, really unique battle system. The battle system is like one of simultaneous, like parallel blind bidding, where you're going to use the money you've acquired through your round to activate different areas of the battle, whether that's killing your own troops for victory points or winning the battle itself to claim the territory control token. So there are different ways to best utilize your money, and it's a process of trying to like out-suss the other player in terms of what is going to be the best thing for you in a given battle. The reveal, when you pull up your shield and you see how you've placed all your coins in the battle, is so great to me. Like that back and forth tension of wondering what the other person is going to do. I have played a lot of Rising Sun with a specific group of friends for whom it was our very regular area control fixture. Enough so that I think that now that sort of phase is a little bit behind us, Rising Sun will probably be slipping down my list a little bit. It has moved down 5 spots, but I still love it and would still highly recommend it. That is Rising Sun by Eric Lang.
Neilan, I think you're right. And I think that this is one of those games that if you invited me to your friend group to play this for, No, but really, I think that if I played this game more, it would, without a doubt, be probably around this area on my list. I just need to play it more. Everything you said right now, I'm like, wow, that sounds amazing. It's been such a long time that I only remember the drama of our game.
What drama? I don't remember
which
any
we
drama.
don't have to relive right now. But yeah, I want to play it right now. Everything about that sounds like I would love. So next time you play it, let me know.
I mean, knowing that you and Mark still seem to like it a lot more than other people on the podcast, I really do think we should return to it. Like, I genuinely think that it sounds like this should be one that we do break out.
Definitely.
He invoked diplomacy and did not deliver. Ergo, 4 out of 10.
I will also say that I ranked it as 34th, so this is double cross.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Neilan, so I'm not one of the people who will be myself as you told the others to do.
Oh, all right. My 16th favorite game of all time is Castles of Burgundy. Castles of Burgundy is a wonderful tile laying game with multiple paths to victory and just so many fun decisions on how to use your dice every single turn. And I think what I love about this, and this is probably kind of unique for games on my list, because typically I am kind of the meeples on the map, fighty person. So having something like this that is pretty puzzly and like almost solo experience is unique, but I just really love it. Like, it's kind of delightful to play this game, and there are plenty of opportunities to combo, and there are special powers that can kind of build on what you are already building or beginning to build. It's just so satisfying every time we play this game, and there is enough variability built in with the unique player boards that it doesn't get old. Obviously, this is not a new game, but it's new to my list. I just learned this game this year. Longtime Sunshine / Daniel taught me this, and I'm just so happy to have it in my rotating list of games that I would just say yes to anytime somebody wanted to play it.
I love the tension. Like, there are so many tiles that you want, and you can't get them all. So you have to decide in what order you want the things, and the interactivity comes from not getting what you actually want. This is a game I got rid of maybe 6 or 7 years ago, back when I left New York, and gave to Kurt, but have since reacquired, and my tastes have even skewed more Euro in their intervening years, and this just feels like the classic Feld game that's hard to beat. There's a lot going on. It's very fun.
And you're right, it's not that there's no interactivity. There definitely is. One that comes to mind immediately is the first player track. And there's a specific type of area that you have to build in order to advance your token along this track. And it really matters who's first player. And so that actually ends up being a pretty tense, like, oh, you keep getting ahead of me in that. So it's definitely not completely void of player interaction, but it has enough of the solo puzzliness that it's still really satisfying without people just stealing from you all the time, which I also like. But in this game, like Kellen said, a lot of that tension just comes from wanting to do so many things yourself and not being able to. And so just like kind of changing the efficiency every time you play.
And I will say that the Kellen strategy of pretending to be in last place the whole game also does work in Castles of Burgundy.
Confirmed.
I think delightful is a really good term to use for it. And sort of to piggyback off what Kellen said, you know, there is the thing where you want a certain tile, but I think one of the appeals of this game is even if that tile isn't there, even if it does get taken, there's so many different ways to score points that you always feel like you can build on something. It's not a crushing blow to get that tile taken away from you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised this isn't on either of your lists. You guys just like tepid enjoyment?
Yeah, I like it whenever it comes up, but I don't ever feel like I'm itching to play it. But I've
also only actually played it once, and I like it.
Cool. All right, come over and play once COVID is over. That is Castles of Burgundy, my 16th favorite game of all time.
Step 1, impersonate a nurse. Step 2, get COVID vaccine. Step 3, come over and play Castles of Burgundy. My number 15th favorite board game of all time has swapped positions with Codenames as my word game of choice. This is Decrypto.
This was on my list as well. This is my number 21 game, so that's double crossover.
And mine as well. It's a triple crossover. 47 on my list.
Wow. We know our double, triple, and quadruple
Yes.
crossovers. We know what the word crossover means.
Do not question the maths.
In Decrypto, you are vaguely trying to get teams to guess at what numbers you are hinting at by giving clues, but the other team can sort of try to interpret your clues. My favorite part of Decrypto really is writing down, okay, they gave a clue for number 1, and it was fire. And then the next round, it was circle. And the next round, it was bird. And you're like, that's got to be Phoenix. You know, we know what this is. It's got to be Phoenix. Or is it that, or is it Circle K? It's this sort of, you have this list of words, and you're trying to interpret what it might be, but you never really have to actually guess the word. It's just the vague category and how it relates to the other words that people are giving. This one really is a word game for board gamers. I would not bring this out with non-gamers. You know, maybe as the fourth player, if you have 3 people who know what they're doing, I'd bring along a non-gamer noob to play a round of Decrypto. Just a great word game. The one that I would choose the most of all word games right now. I definitely think if you have not played this, you should give it a go. A lot to unpack in Decrypto. A very good game, a very hard game to teach. Just make them start playing. Don't explain the rules. It works every time, I promise. My 15th favorite board game of all time, Decrypto.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Kellen. That's a pretty strict rule for you when you teach Decrypto. Is like, we're just playing it, and if you dare ask me questions, we're not going to play it. We're just putting this away.
I actually yes.
Yeah.
He'll walk out,
real.
he'll leave game night if you break the rule.
I've never left game night, but
But he's threatened.
It's hilarious how there's just this sense, like a board gamer who's seasoned will be like, I know how this goes because I'm smarter than you. Like, even without you explaining the rules, I know what's going to happen. And so they try to guess at it. And just don't do that in Decrypto. Once you play one round, you will get it.
Right.
You really will get it faster by playing one round.
Right.
And so I will say, sorry, the best way to teach this is just to start playing. By the end of the first round, you'll get it. We'll reset, and everyone will be happy, and it'll be faster.
Yeah.
And without fail, someone will attempt to ask a question. They'll attempt. I don't answer it.
Right.
I pause. I look at them, and we keep going.
My number one thought when somebody says Decrypto is that rule of yours, is your teaching style of Decrypto. That's my first thought whenever I hear the word Decrypto.
Yeah, the internal monologue is not silent.
Yeah.
Like my outward expression of silence. That is Decrypto, a really, really good game, and one I would really recommend pretty universally within the hobby.
My number 15th favorite game of all time is a new entry to the list. Brand new game, and the best titled game of all time. This is Barrage. That's a tie-in with the podcast.
Yeah, but they ruined our search engine optimization.
That's true. That's why I docked them a spot. They're actually 14th, but I gave them a -1 for screwing us. Barrage is the type of game I love. Real tough economic game. It's got a lot of really cool things to it. One of the things that is just great, and it sort of enhances the toughness of it, is that the main resource, the number one resource, is water, and it's a fight over the water. Like, the water is coming down the mountain, and it's just the most valuable thing, and people can just block off your water, and it's just I need water. How could you block off my water? I just need a drop. Let me have a drop of water. And they don't let you have a drop of water, and that's just so great. Depriving people of water is just wonderful. You can quote me on that. Put that on the back of the box. But beyond that, it's just got a lot of really interesting things to it. The way that you use your buildings or use your tools in the game, you put them on a wheel, and instead of paying them to the bank, you just put them on a wheel, and as turns go, they become reactive in your pile. So it's just a unique take on spending resources. It's got a sort of Terra Mystica sort of board where as you're moving things off your board, you're getting more and more powerful. There's a lot of really cool things about it. It's very puzzly in the way that you're trying to figure out the water that activates your sort of scoring chains. It can go from one part of the mountain down to another part, and it chains as it goes down. So there's a puzzly nature to it where you're trying to figure out how things are going to flow and trying to make sure that you can place things in a way that you can piggyback and score off of it. It's just a really, really great game. Really, really tough, really tight, and a lot of maybe not wholly unique, because as I've mentioned, like this thing is something you see in Terra Mystica. So they're not wholly unique, but the way that they're all blended together is just really, really great. It's a really, really great game. That is my 15th favorite game of all time. Barrage.
This is cropped up on our Discord a lot, that I've seen at least, as a very strong favorite. I feel like I have to play this. I'm surprised I haven't, because as you're talking about it, I'm just thinking like how good all of that sounds.
Yeah.
We need to fix that at some point next year.
Yeah, I think it's not so economic that it'd be distasteful, because I think sometimes if games get too economic, they don't really work for us so well. But this is just enough cutthroat, just enough economic, just enough Euro that I think it all works together well.
Cool. My number 15 game is a little trick that Kellen loves. This is every Exit game ever made. And you just pick your favorite one to go in the spot. Exit is a series of escape room style games. So they're emulating the escape room phenomenon, where you buy an exit box, and these are typically very cheap, in the $10 vicinity. And enclosed in that is a series of puzzles where you are loosely progressing through rooms, solving puzzles, but critically, you're using parts of the components of the box to solve these puzzles. So typically what that means is you have this manual that is included in every game, and you're cutting that manual. You're folding it in interesting ways. The way that it uses physicality of components in order to engineer these puzzles borders on some of the most creative puzzle design I've ever seen. And I almost don't want to spoil to what extent that even goes, because you would probably be surprised in your very first game of Exit how creative they get with those components. The one thing that's surprised me, just on top of even that first experience, is how they've managed to keep this up for as many games they've put out. I've not played every Exit game, but I played close to 10 of them, and I'm still surprised and amazed by the ingeniousness of like the puzzles that are in them. The one thing I will say as a caveat, these are one and done games, so once you've played them, you've probably ruined all of the components in them, at least if you're playing them quote unquote properly. I know that there are ways to play the games without mangling everything, but if you're okay with that, and you're okay with the idea of a singular, unique, one-off experience that comes fairly cheaply, then I can't recommend this enough. I would say that I have traditionally recommended Abandoned Cabin as the good entry point, and I polled a couple of people in the Discord, and I feel like that's still true. If this sounds appealing, pick up Abandoned Cabin, and I promise you will have a great time if you have any mind for puzzle solving like I do. That is Exit the game.
My 15th favorite game, I know you didn't expect this, but The Doctor's back again. Very, very heavily featured this week. And for number 15, he's here with The Quest for El Dorado. And I know this is a double crossover, right, Neilan?
Love this game.
Double crossover. So Neilan and I both spoke about this last week, but we're going to talk about it again. And I'm gonna just invoke that same word, which is delightful, because this is really, really a delightful race deck builder game. And I say delightful because it really, truly gives you this like childish sense of wonder that you used to get in the summer when like school was out and you ran out to the neighborhood with all your friends and you were racing to like get something first. It just really feels like that. It's such a simple and straightforward game that it really allows you to get lost in the theme and that sense, I think. And I mean, it's just fun. It's delightful. And it's kind of like every time you just kind of want to improve your efficiency a little bit, but it doesn't really even matter because you're just having a great time.
Right. One thing I want to say, in contrast to what I was saying earlier in this episode about Dominion, in some ways, this actually breaks a lot of the mold of deck building in that there are no victory points in this game. So the idea of collecting your estates, collecting your provinces, that does not exist in this game. Mm-hmm. You're just trying to get to the end through the most efficient creation of your deck as possible.
Right.
In ways that make it feel like one of the more interesting deck builders.
That is my 15th favorite game of all time, The Quest for El Dorado.
My 14th favorite board game of all time is the perfect distillation of a CCG in one box. This is John Cloudis's best game, Omen, A Reign of War. Every time I play this game, I think, wow, this is so much better than it has any right to be. It is a CCG-like where you are playing monsters to different sides of a conflict and duking it out with different types of units, with monsters and oracles. And each different type of unit helps you in different ways. You know, oracles are giving you bonuses every turn. Monsters are really, really good at combat. The art in Omen is my favorite art in any board game ever. And in some ways inspired the Instagram account that inspired the podcast, Board Game Barrage. I think it's one of the first 4 pictures I ever took, and I look at the art and I want it, which is weird because I have it.
Christmas gift from me.
Oh yeah. Christina has actually gotten me a framed painting from one of the artists who did some of the illustrations in Omen. Omen has an achievement system where you're not just duking it out. It's not just reduce ye enemy's hit points from 1400 to 0. It's like, no, do these specific things. Get a monster in every row that forces you to do things against what you might want to do to just destroy the battle. This is a clean system, a smooth system, one that really, really emulates the best of these kind of dueling back and forth games all in one box. I cannot recommend this enough. This has been one that I have seen many people purchase after hearing us talk about it or talking about it on the Discord. It's always a hit. I don't know that I've ever run into anyone who said, yeah, I don't like that, or just had sort of a tepid response. It's beautiful. I love it. Something that will never leave my collection. I love supporting smaller, more indie artists. This is Omen, A Reign of War, my 14th favorite board game of all time.
My 14th favorite game of all time is a shout out to Woggers on the Discord. He was wondering whether or not this game would remain on my list.
You're not going to add Lancaster to this,
Not only does it remain on the list, it's moving up the list. It was 21st in 2019. It's 14 now. This is Lancaster. Lancaster is one of the genres of games that I really, really love. Sort of the old classic Euros with very stripped down rules, but just gets to the point and does it fantastically. Lancaster is a game of sort of many auctions are on the board, and the auctions are sort of resolved in a bidding system where you're placing your knight and your squires to control one of the bids. And if somebody wants to come in and outbid you, they have to place a stronger set of a knight and squires, and then you get your knight back, but all the squires that you put down are all gone. So you have to be very, very careful about how you're going to assign these squires that are adding a +1 to your strength in the area. But if somebody's willing to bump you out of there, you're going to lose all those squires. And that's just a very, very tough determination to make, how strong to go in. You know, sometimes it's better to limp into a spot, have somebody else come in, and then push them out stronger. There's a lot of things to consider. I really, really love that. The other thing I love is the laws aspect of the game, where at the end of every round, there are 3 new rules that are up for vote, and whether or not you've gained more votes determines the strength of your vote, and you can enact new laws in the game that score points based on whatever the new law is. So it lends a variability to the game, but it also gives this voting aspect a very interesting twist. I just love how streamlined it is. I love how simple it is, and it's just a fantastic game. My 14th favorite game of all time is Lancaster.
My 14th favorite game of all time is moving up a little bit, is Ingenious. And the reason it's moving up is because I played this at 2-player for the first time this year. And I was very, very pleasantly surprised by how well Ingenious, which area control dudes in the map games are not often their best at 2-player, but Ingenious works shockingly well at 2 players. Ingenious is a card drafting driven troops in the map game where all of your actions are entirely dictated by the card you play. So every round starts with a card draft of the same 16 cards, and that is all of the action cards that are in the game. So over the course of a game, and especially over the course of multiple games, you start to get very, very familiar with all of the actions that someone can do, such that when you see them come up in the draft, you're like, well, there's no way I'm going to let them take that, so you keep it for yourself. So there's this element of subtle, like, not necessarily hate drafting, because you are forced to keep all the cards you draft, but certainly of drafting the cards that are going to work the best for you in a given round versus your, in the case of a 2-player game, your opponent. One of the things I thought that also worked incredibly well at 2 players was kind of what Christina was alluding to in Babylonia, just kind of this intense, like, this for that trade-off. Like, I know that if I take this territory, then I'm taking it away from one other player. There's less to keep your eye on the way that's very satisfying. It kind of feels like the win conditions don't sneak up on you. There's something you can keep a grip on all the time. And I'm just talking about like the version of this game that I played this year. It is still a fantastic multiplayer game. It has baked into the combat system almost pure negotiation. Combat basically boils down to, well, we could just keep picking away at each other until we decide to stop. And that is almost the extent of the combat system. It is a very cool game of slowly creeping through this map, best utilizing a very small handful of troops in order to eke your way towards one of these 3 win conditions. And when someone is able to pounce on one of those win conditions, they declare it like strongly, I am going to win this round unless you stop me. And then it turns into this all-out war to stop that player from winning the game. Inish is fantastic. I think that the depth that the red epic card adds to the variability of the game makes it feel like you just have a little trick up your sleeve that you didn't have in the previous game. And the art on all of these cards is stunning. Like, this is some of my favorite card art just because of like how unique and vibrant it is. Inish is a fantastic game and one I'm looking forward to playing a lot more of in the future. That is my number 14 game, Inish.
Inish for me has always been a game where it's been less than some of its parts. I love every part of Inish, but I have never liked a play of Inish for the bash the leader aspect of it until we played with the expansion, which I think solves that problem and makes me more excited to play Inish. So yeah, I'm hoping to play more of it with the expansion.
I'm 100% with you, Mark. Yes, you took the words right out of my mouth. Agree.
I think that many times people trick themselves into thinking like that they could understand a drafting game that has like 100 cards in it, and that they're so good at the strategic depths that they can figure out which of these 8 cards in their hand the next player doesn't want. I think Inish distills it down to where drafting actually works because you can understand all the cards. And each decision is so meaningful, and the ability to actually keep 2. You don't have to keep the card you got in the last round. You can actually change up your strategy based on seeing a whole new hand. Just adds a little wrinkle there that I think is really right.
My 14th favorite game of all time has already gotten a lot of play on this podcast this year, so I'm going to keep it nice and short. And I mean, I think I'm actually just going to hand it over to Kellen. Kellen, you want to talk about my number 14 for me? It's a little game called Hanabi.
I made a mistake.
This game has been talked about 3 times on this set of episodes.
That's right. This is a triple crossover.
Yeah.
Triple crossover, me, Kellen, and Kellen. Hanabi is my favorite co-op game. Truly, though, we have talked about this so much, so I don't need to go into it too much, but the silent, tense communication that happens during this game is just so beautiful and really unlike most other co-op games. It is one of those games where you really, really, really don't want to let down your teammates. And so you just feel this immense pressure to do the right thing, make the right move. It's a great game. And also Kellen likes playing it, which is not easy to find co-op games that Kellen likes playing.
There's sort of this like type of game that you just somehow feels like it's always existed. And I don't know how else to describe it. Like, I think Tigris and Euphrates does a really good job as well of feeling very timeless. And Hanabi just feels like 100 different people have vomited out versions of Hanabi. But like, yeah, you invented chess too. Great, you idiot. Like, we have chess. And for me, in a lot of ways, that's what Hanabi represents. You can put that on the box. My 13th favorite board game of all time comes to us from Classic Carl.
Classic Carl!
Glory to Rome is
double crossover.
A double crossover. Triple crossover.
Yeah.
Glory to Rome is Karl Chudyk at his best. Karl Chudyk is the king of multi-use cards. Every card could be a different thing. It can be whatever you want it to be, baby. In Glory to Rome, you are building a civilization, and you are doing it with overpowered combos. And my favorite part about Glory to Rome, my absolute favorite part, is the whining and the weeping and the wailing and the gnashing of teeth as your opponents say, wait a minute, that card can't work the way you think it does. That's not fair, man. As you play Glory to Rome, It has a very cool lead-follow system, the ability to do one of my favorite things in board games, which is you get patrons. So it's like every time someone in the future does a craftsman action, boom, I've already got a free one. Every time someone does a build action, boom, I got 3 of those, baby. You can mold your faction to what you want it to be, and the whole game starts from this controlled place and pushes outwards towards chaos. This, I think, is the silver bullet, the magic bullet to get the boring Euro players playing more fun games. I could start them on innovation, but it doesn't work so well. But Glory to Rome is perfect because it has that sort of Euro core. It all makes sense, and it slowly breaks until chaos ensues. Karl Chudyk is a mastermind, perhaps my favorite board game designer of all time. Glory to Rome, an amazing game, and one that is unfortunately really hard to find right now. Anyone who wants to check it out, I would encourage to do a print and play. The rights, who knows where they are? Who has the rights? No one has the rights. You could seek out Matainai, a inferior version of the game that is shorter, is about monks, and the theme makes no sense. So play Glory to Rome, get a print and play. Please check it out. It's very good. My 13th favorite game of all time.
Wait, you're saying I could play Glory to Rome but with monks?
You could, Mark, but you'd be wrong.
My 13th favorite game of all time was so good that 3 years before it even came out, Cyndi Lauper wrote a song about it. Christina, do you know the song I'm talking about? The game I'm talking about?
Girls just want to have fun.
Close. Very close. Almost there. True Colors. True Colors is a game I've talked about a ton. This is my 13th favorite game of all time, which was the same spot it was in last year. True Colors is the game of...
double crossover. Woo.
Double crossover. Double crossover. There you go. True Colors is a game of which of your friends would be best at this? Which of your friends is worst at that? That's what it is. The secret vote. That's basically all it is. As we've said before, don't play this with people that you don't know because it's going to be terrible and awkward, but maybe you want that. So go ahead and do it if you want. I'm not going to stop you. True Colors is fantastic, though. If you are with friends you know and love and you want to get into talking about what you really think of them and maybe like learning more about what they think of you, True Colors is the way to do it. We've played this a number of times, and it's always been super, super, super fun. My 13th favorite game of all time is True Colors.
The double down of it, I think, is
Yeah.
the absolute worst part, which is like, which one of us is the worst at singing? And it's like, there is an answer, right? And learning that you're the worst at singing, okay, that might be bad, but you heard Cheer Up Charlie on the patron bonus episode, so you wouldn't have picked me. But even if everyone picks you, then you have to write down that you also don't think that anyone would vote for you for that.
Right.
So then you reveal to everyone that you're so delusional about yourself. Like, so it's not only do you get to find out, you have to reveal what you think
Your
about
lack
yourself.
of self-awareness.
Yeah,
And not only that, and that's a great point, but not only that, it's the fact that everybody gets 2 votes. So, not only are they voting for you, but everybody decided to put both votes in for you as being the worst singer. It's like really hammering it home.
oh man, what a game.
My 13th favorite game, like Exit, is an extremely Neilan game, which is to say it's high on my list and will probably not be on anyone else's. This is Watson and Holmes. This is a murder mystery game in the vein of Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, which is a cooperative game, but Watson and Holmes takes that construct and makes it competitive. The premise of the game is that you are traveling to different locations in London, and each of those location cards has a new piece of the murder mystery. So I might go to the police station and I get one little paragraph of text that's going to tell me some information that the police found about this case that we're solving. And now I'm going to then pretend that this is the most important piece of information I've ever discovered, and then place a token down on that location to make people think that it's perhaps more important than it is, because there is this location bidding system at the start of every round where suddenly people now thinking that that's a valuable location go, well, I'm going to spend 3 tokens to get there. And then Christina comes in and is like, no, I'm going to spend 4 tokens to get there. And meanwhile, I'm just laughing to myself because Scotland Yard is useless and didn't find anything out about the case, and they're all spending all their tokens to go there. One of the things I love about this is it has bespoke cases like Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, in that they are pre-written stories that you can only work through once, but there are multiple routes to sort of uncover the mystery. And one of my favorite things about Watson and Holmes is at the end of every game, there's this open discussion where you're just like, how did you find this out? Because I know you didn't go here. I know you didn't get this here, but you realize that they've just planted threads of all the relevant information at various points throughout the city. It's so smartly designed, and I love just that process of finding out how everyone got to the same solution and how they might have got there faster than you. That is Watson and Holmes, my number 13 game.
I prefer Clue.
Fair.
Callback.
My 13th favorite game of all time always brings up the question, is there air in an airport? This is the classic game Sixes. This game is a version of Scattergories in which players are timed and trying to come up with as many words that fit within a category as possible. It is a party game that with the wrong group is not fun because it devolves into really, really, really petty arguments that can be extremely frustrating. But with the right group, it devolves into really, really, really petty arguments that are hilarious and really fun. I would say we've had way more of the latter version of the game Sixes. You can bring it out. You can teach it to anyone. It's a family game. It's a gamer game if you want it to be. It never disappoints, never lets me down, and we always learn who the tryhards are.
Wasn't the last one about?
I was going to say,
bugs
spiders, bugs. I think was the theme of that.
Which they're not.
Another one was like, if it's items in a purse, can you say like penny, quarter, nickel?
No.
The answer is no, you cannot. But yeah, it's a great game. It's a ton of fun. It makes me kind of sad to talk about it because honestly, it's been so long since we've had a party. It's just like I have these fond memories that seem so distant now. But that is my 13th favorite game of all time, Sixes.
It really has turned for us into like, if you vote with me on this one, I'll vote with you on the next one, which it may be outside the scope of Sixes at this point, but definitely some top 10 gaming memories of all time at some Barrage cons with Sixes. My 12th favorite board game of all time has moved up from slot 23. I want to make a board game dictionary. I want in it to have the Eurogame label, and I want next to it to be the box Hansa Teutonica. The quintessential old school Euro game, the silver bullet to push us away from the new school Euro game where everything that you do matters. No. Let us play Hansa Teutonica. I believe this is a
triple.
This
is for me as well.
And if it has not yet become a quad crossover, so shall it may become at some point in the future episodes. I really think this is so smooth, so elegant, a game of upgrading your ability to do things on the map, a game of blocking, a game of wanting to get got so that you can move your troops to another location and get even more. Just a delight. The new big box is out in stores now, and there is not really a better value recommend that I think the podcast could give. You should play Hansa Teutonica. Let us bring it back. Let us usher in an era where we can hurt each other in our Euro games and we can have a good time together. Hansa Teutonica, my 12th favorite board game of all time.
My 12th favorite game of all time has dropped from 4. Last year, it was 3 the year before that. This is Francis Drake. Big drop from Francis Drake. Just have not played it. It really bums me out. It's one of those things where I can't defend keeping it so high if I haven't played it for so long. Come on, it's a two-phase game, man. I love two-phase games. Why can't we play this one? It's got pretty boats. It's a game we have to play. Francis Drake, as I mentioned, has 2 phases. The first phase has another aspect that I love in games where you can go as far down the row as you want to get your resources, but you can't go back. So if you really want that thing way down the line there, go ahead and get it, but you're going to miss out on all these other things. I just love that. It's so cool. And furthermore, the things you can get on that track, on the resource track, there's a lot of like standard things like, workers and gunpowder and stuff like that you can, you get every round that is not too exciting, but there are like one-off spots that unlock special like abilities and special information, and that's another thing I love. It's like you can not only go for like grabbing all resources, but grab these like special things that make you like even more powerful. And as I said before, it's got a really lush production that really helps it for me. You know, you're going after gems and you've got little treasure chests that you put your gems in, and the boats are you know, they're not super lavish, but I think it just really works. It's a really big nautical board. I love everything about it. I really need to get it played again, but until I do, I can't warrant it any higher than number 12, Francis Drake.
I will forever remember this as the game that I watched Mark gleefully lay out, with twinkling his eyes, explain the rules, so proud of the fact that he was about to show me one of his favorite games, and then we packed it all up and didn't play it for reasons that aren't worth going into, and I still have to date not play Francis Drake.
Yes.
It was very sad
so
to watch. I'm not gonna lie. My 12th favorite game of all time is my favorite Troops on a Map, Peoples on a Plane, Sandy Peterson game with Mr. Cthulhu and friends. Did I get all of that, Kellen?
You got it.
We've spoken about this already in this episode, so I'm not going to dwell on it too much, but Cthulhu Wars is fantastic. It is that beautiful mishmash of the most garish, Ameritrashy looking game with big figures and lots of dice with Euroness woven into the fabric of it. Like, it's under the surface like an actual resource management game with this crazy move these monstrous figures around the board and throw tons of dice in a way that doesn't feel unfair in the way that Mark was describing. You're throwing enough dice that the luck sort of mitigates out over the course of it. What a fantastic game. Beautiful asymmetry, both within each faction and between all of the factions. Can't wait to play more of this. That is Cthulhu Wars, my number 12.
That is a double crossover at this point. We can only go up.
Who could say? My 12th favorite game of all time is a double crossover from this episode with Mr. Kellen.
Hanabi?
Oh my gosh.
No, this is Telestrations. And Kellen mentioned it did not even need an introduction, and now it needs even less of an introduction. But again, I will just say that it is amazing to bring out with your family, with your friends. Anytime you do, you have a roaring, laughing time, and it'll never, ever leave my list.
My number 11th favorite board game of all time has me growing soft in my old age. This previously was in my top 10 and has moved out because of how mean it is. Yes, you can be too mean for Callan Allen. This is Diplomacy. Wow. We could write books about this game, and I'm sure there are books. There are certainly many articles written about Diplomacy, the quintessential lie to your friends and stab them in the back game, the friendship killer. Diplomacy has so many interesting systems in it, one of my favorite being that everyone must write down their orders and submit them, and they all get revealed at once, and they all get resolved at once, and you leave the table, and you got to write down your orders, and you know you're poring over the map, and someone's like, hey, Kellen, can you leave the table so Mark and I can have a private discussion around the board? And you're like, absolutely not. I'm not going anywhere. My most recent play of Diplomacy was great. It is a great game. It really is a great game. It evokes Dune. It evokes, well, I mean, I guess Dune evokes it. Who could say? But it's so mean. It is Survivor. It is Neilan, I will not betray you till the end, and then I betray Neilan. It's like literally I look him in the eye, I say we're in it to win it, and then I write down the orders, and Neilan gets revealed, and he's crushed.
I did cry last time we played.
It's really hard. I feel bad.
Well, I actually cried when I betrayed Paxton. I felt so... As I revealed it, I just started... I just felt... I couldn't do it. I can't play this game.
It is an experience. If you have not tried Diplomacy, if you like negotiation, you must try it. I don't know how it fits into my top 50 board games of all time anymore. I feel like it exists alongside it in some weird way. It's one I do not really care to play with randos. I would prefer to play it with people I like. Playing with randos is just too Machiavellian, too crazy. The people who are good at this are crazy. Let's just say that. Diplomacy, a unique design, a landmark design, one that's worth looking at if you have not. A rabbit hole of a game, Diplomacy.
My 11th favorite game of all time.
And also Rising Sun has nothing to do with Diplomacy. Thank you, sir.
My 11th favorite game of all time is also a new entry to the list. And while it may be a new entry, it's the original worker placement game. That's right. This is Splotter's Bus. This game is amazing. I love so many aspects of it. It's another one of those games where it has a very clean design that I just love. The rules are very slight, but there's a lot going on the board. It's got the same dominant species sort of worker placement thing where you're placing your workers on a row of actions that progress from the top left to the bottom right. It's got a unique thing where you have, at the beginning of the game, you have all the workers you're ever going to have, and every worker you use is going to be spent and never come back. So if in that first round you want to use all your workers, by all means go ahead, but you're not doing anything for the rest of the game. I just love that. It's just a unique take on worker placement. And I just love how cutthroat it is. You know, you're fighting over these passengers and it can get really, really tough. It can get really, really cutthroat, and, you know, you're vying for these people, and, you know, you may be banking on a passenger because it's going to be dinner time and he's going to be wanting to go to the pub, but you can always use that breaking the time continuum spot and just stop time and screw up everybody's plans. It's just a really, really fresh, I say fresh, although it was the first, but it's like a worker placement game like no other to me. And even though it came first, it's been iterated upon, and, you know, there's other claimants for the throne of first worker placement game, but I don't think many do the same things that Bus does. I just love it. That is my number 11th favorite game of all time, Bus.
My 11th favorite game of all time has fallen out of my top 10 down 3 places. This is Scythe. Scythe is another hybrid game, which is to say it's a mash of Euro systems and area control to some extent, but it leans much more towards the Euro optimization end of things. It was billed as a 4X adjacent game, but I would almost call it a 4X themed Euro game is probably the best way I would express that. It is much more about finding the optimal path of both acquiring resources and spending those resources optimally in order to progress towards what is a very simple end of game condition, which is as soon as someone gets 6 stars, the game ends and you tally your victory points. Those victory points are going to be through either the money you've acquired or how you have spread yourself over the territories of the board. Because there is this element of board and area control, which plays out not strictly through a combat system, because Scythe, despite appearances, is not a combat-heavy game, but it's one I describe as a Cold War sort of game, where the threat of combat, it feels like everything. Combat in Scythe can be devastating, and sort of pulling it off at just the right moment, especially if that's a game-winning or a game-ending moment, can be really, really vital. So those standoffs as your mechs are sort of circling each other a little bit on the edges of your respective territory feel like a battle that's about to brew, and the tension over how that's going to unfold and who's going to come out better for it is quite tense, despite it not being a combat-heavy game. Scythe has a pretty unique and novel theme, a very cool aesthetic. I did find myself cooling on it a little bit this year, hence it's slipping down to my top 10, but I still love Scythe.
A sheep in wolf's clothing.
My 11th favorite game of all time is yet another Dudes on a Map, Meeples on a Map game. And this one is, again, not a new game, but new to me. And I love it, obviously. It's my number 11. This is Kemet. I feel like I've spoken a little bit about Kemet before, but like I said, Kemet is a Meeples on a Map game. And one of the things that I love the most about Kemet is this sense that you are building your own asymmetric player power every single game through the use of this kind of like tech tree in the form of the power tiles. And I just think that's so cool and interesting because every time you play, you can kind of decide if you want to pursue the same type of player power or if you want to try something different. And you can even kind of pivot if you need to, probably not midway through the game, but if it's early enough, you know, you can start going one route and then pivot if it seems like it's not going to work out. I just love that. I feel like it has such great replayability. And the other thing that I love about this is the combat system. It's so rewarding to attack because you get one permanent victory point if you are the attacker and you win the battle. And so if you have the right cards in your hand, you've built up the right power tiles, then you can just move in with even a small amount of units, win the battle, and then you can recall your units and use those recalled units to move your prayer points back up. And so it doesn't feel super punishing, and it also doesn't feel quite as mean, because the people that are being attacked, you expect to be attacked, because that is like one permanent victory point is so valuable in this game. There are temporary victory points that are also really fun, because there's a lot of push and pull tension there where you have something, and if you can only hold on to it until the end of the day phase, then you can win the game, but people aren't going to let you. They're going to come in and try and steal that from you. The action system is very limited, so you really have to plan out your turn and future turns pretty precisely. And you just have so much control. I feel like you have a lot of control in this game. You're controlling what your powers are going to be. You're controlling which route you're going to take.
It's almost in some ways like the exact opposite of what I was talking about in Scythe, where like there's no dancing around each other in Kemet. Like it's just like you're going to build troops up and throw them at the other person, and that's expected, and that's what you know everyone is here to do. You're here to like get your troops, throw in a freaking giant scorpion, and then just throw that squad at like another player. And it's so quick and it moves so fast, and it doesn't have like the dice rolling luck. It's just so clean and precise.
And the movement is so unique as well, because you can literally teleport. I know Kellen hates that about it, but I think it's super fun. And kind of to what you were saying, Neilan, like you can make things happen so fast, you know, which is pretty necessary because actions are very limited.
It steals its combat card system from one of our favorite games, Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea.
Oh boy. The battle is also really interesting because winning a battle is different than hurting enemy units. And so you really have to be careful, because if you have a card that is really strong for winning the battle, it might not also be good at either killing enemy units or protecting your units from being killed. So if somebody is being attacked and they're like, well, I can't win this battle, but I can kill all their units, then it doesn't matter if you win the battle.
Right.
So it's just it's a very interesting take on battle, and just so much fun. I really, really love this game. I'm so glad that this entered my world this year.
And this is a double crossover for me. Kemet was earlier on my list as well. Fantastic game.
Oh, what number was it for you?
It was number 34 on my list.
Okay.
I wonder, Mark, if we could figure out why their opinions on these games are so wrong. You know, Rising Sun and Kemet together being sort of just the worst versions of the other Dudes on a Map games.
Well, Rising Sun's on my list, and
No,
and also Mark and I have the exact same opinion on Inish. So
that's right. So
Mark,
So
I just said, do you want to form an alliance with me? And what did you say?
well, I do want to hear, Kellen, your take on the mathematical, how close everybody is to everybody else in Kemet.
No one cares, Mark. Stop bringing it up. Yes, every spot is the same as every other spot on the board, but it doesn't look like that. It's an optical illusion.
I love that. I love that.
Oh, that is Kemet, my 11th favorite game of all time.
So that is going to do it for our top 20 to 11 favorite games of all time. Join us next week for the big one, the top 10. As always, you can find us at BoardGameBarrage.com. You can join our Discord and talk about your top 20 to 11, because I know everybody has that list ready and at hand. So bring it to BoardGameBarrage.com/Discord and let us know what your top 20 games are, or talk about our top games so far. Tell us what you think about Kellen having Hanabi twice, that controversial move that he did, you know. Took a gamble. Let us know what you think about it. You can write to us at BoardGameBarrage@gmail.com. You can join our Patreon and get the bonus episode that Kellen was talking about. I guess I wasn't even on this one, and I guess he sang on it. So that's reason enough to pay some money to us, I think. So BoardGameBarrage.com/Patreon. Thank you as always to Heart Society for our intro and outro song, What's on Your Mind, Kid, from the album Wake the Queens. And until next week, when we wrap this sucker up, thank you so much. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye.
You're up, Kellen.
Oh, sorry.
No problem.
My bad. I forgot the acronym already after one run through.
You know, one easy thing to remember, I
Nope,
used to do this
I
in
don't.
school. All you have to remember one thing, and
Nope.
it's the same every single episode.
Great.
All you have to remember is who comes before you.
Okay, but I went first.
Yeah, but for the rest of the
Okay, but it doesn't. You said I have to remember one thing, and it already is broken.
Oh my gosh!
Right?
He got you there. He got you there.
I proved you.
Christina.
Yeah, you got me.
You made a mistake. Issue your correction. All right. My 19th favorite. I go after this. My 17th favorite game of all time is the other game that has risen dramatically.
Wait.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
on 18.
Damn it. My number 18. My number 18 favorite